The next day, Damien woke to the sound of his phone buzzing loudly on the nightstand. He groggily reached for it, blinking against the bright screen. It was another message from Alara, this time with coordinates. Meet us at the designated location. A ship will arrive at midnight. The rest of the day passed in a blur of confusion and anticipation. Damien couldn't tell if he was dreaming or if this was really happening. By the time the sun set, he found himself standing in an empty alley, the designated location eerily quiet. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, and the ground beneath him trembled. He looked up, startled, as an enormous craft descended silently from the sky. The ship was sleek, unlike anything he had ever seen. Its design was alien, organic, as though it were alive. The surface shimmered with an iridescent glow, shifting colors like liquid light. A hatch opened with a hiss, and out stepped a figure draped in a shimmering cloak, their face hidden beneath a hood. The figure gestured for him to approach. "Damien Lawson?" the figure asked in a voice that was both human and otherworldly, as if it carried echoes of distant stars. "Yes," Damien replied, his voice shaky yet filled with curiosity. "I'm Damien." "Come with us," the figure said. "We have much to show you." With hesitation and a sense of awe, Damien followed. As he boarded the ship, a feeling of weightlessness enveloped him, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to disappear. The interior of the ship was unlike anything he could have imagined, sleek, metallic walls intertwined with organic patterns, glowing with the light of strange, floating orbs. The air was alive with an energy he couldn't describe, as if the ship itself was a living being. They traveled for what seemed like hours, though Damien lost all sense of time. Eventually, they arrived at a facility hidden deep within an asteroid belt. The ship docked inside a massive, high-tech structure, a place that looked like something out of a science fiction novel. Alara, now standing before him in a silver cloak, turned and led Damien into the heart of the facility. They passed through several corridors filled with strange artifacts, some of which seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Finally, they arrived at a large, circular room, its walls lined with advanced alien technology. "This is where your work will evolve," Alara explained, their voice gentle but firm. "What we have here, Damien, is not just a gallery. It is a place where human creativity can merge with our technology, where art becomes something beyond human comprehension." Damien looked around in awe. He could barely process what was happening, but he could feel the weight of history and possibility in the air. "But, why me?" he asked, still trying to grasp the situation. "Your work is not just art, Damien. It is a bridge. You are a conduit for a new kind of creation, something the universe has been waiting for." Alara's voice softened, almost reverent. "We have watched humanity for eons. You are the one chosen to bring together the mind of the artist and the wonders of the cosmos." Damien's heart raced. This was it, the chance he had always dreamed of. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he felt a surge of purpose. He was no longer just an overlooked artist. He was now part of something far greater than he could have imagined. The next few days were a blur of strange experiences. Damien spent time with alien engineers who helped him enhance his art, introducing him to their advanced technology. He learned to blend human imagination with extraterrestrial precision, creating pieces that transcended the boundaries of reality. Each brushstroke seemed to ignite with energy, as though the art itself was alive. Damien's work was no longer confined to the limitations of Earth. The alien technology amplified his creativity, allowing him to create pieces that were beyond anything human eyes had ever seen. He felt himself changing, becoming something more than just an artist. He was a conduit between two worlds, bridging the gap between human and alien cultures in ways no one had ever dreamed. But even as he reveled in his newfound power, Damien couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing, something dark on the horizon. The aliens had given him everything he needed to succeed, but they also wanted something in return. And he didn't know it yet, but the real journey was just beginning. The aliens had their own agenda, one that would change everything. Damien's first few weeks in the alien facility felt like a fever dream. The walls of the vast, otherworldly structure pulsed with an energy he couldn't fully comprehend, and every room he entered held secrets far beyond human understanding. The aliens, who called themselves Arelin, were patient with him, teaching him how to use their advanced technology to enhance his art. His paintings, once abstract and visceral, began to shimmer with life, reflecting the energy of the stars themselves. The transformation was profound, each piece seemed to breathe with a life of its own. But Damien wasn't just learning new techniques. The experience was reshaping him in ways he couldn't explain. He no longer saw art as a means to an end, as a way to make a living or gain validation. It was now a bridge to something larger, a connection to an entire universe of creativity and intelligence far beyond Earth's limitations. The Arelin were a strange species, humanoid in shape, but their skin shimmered with an iridescent hue, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. They moved with grace, their bodies seeming to meld with the technology around them. They didn't speak often, but when they did, their words were laden with the weight of ancient wisdom. To them, art was not just an expression of the self, but a way to channel the very essence of the universe. The leader of the Arelin, a figure named Zerial, seemed particularly fascinated with Damien. Zerial had a quiet, almost serene presence, his words measured and deliberate. It was Zerial who first explained to Damien the full extent of his newfound power. "Your art is not just a reflection of your soul, Damien," Zerial said one evening as they stood in front of a large canvas. The painting Damien had created now appeared to pulse with light, colors shifting and swirling as if alive. "What you create now is a blend of human ingenuity and our technology. It is a synthesis, a union that allows both worlds to interact in ways that were once impossible." Damien stared at the piece in awe. The vibrant hues he'd chosen had taken on new depth, as though they were speaking to him, revealing truths he had never imagined. His hand shook as he reached out to touch the canvas, but it didn't feel like a traditional surface. It was soft, almost like fabric, but with an underlying energy that hummed beneath his fingertips. "You've only just begun, Damien," Zerial continued. "The universe is vast, and art is a language that transcends all boundaries. We will help you to perfect it, to enhance it. You are not just an artist now. You are a creator, a bridge between species, between galaxies." Damien's heart pounded in his chest. It was all happening so quickly, but he felt a strange sense of purpose. His entire life, he had struggled to find a place in the art world. He had been ignored, dismissed, but now, he was becoming something more. He wasn't just another artist. He was part of a cosmic narrative, a story far greater than anything he had ever dreamed. But as the days passed, Damien began to notice something troubling. The Arelin were not as altruistic as they appeared. There were whispers among the other beings, subtle hints of something darker at play. While they had shown him how to improve his art, they had also shown him the potential to manipulate it, to bend the laws of nature itself. Damien, in his eagerness to learn, had ignored these warnings, but now, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was not quite right. One evening, as he worked late into the night on a new painting, a masterpiece he was certain would push the boundaries of human imagination, he overheard a conversation between Zerial and another Arelin. The words they spoke were quiet, but their tone was enough to send a chill through his spine. "The human is progressing faster than anticipated," Zerial's voice said, the words laced with a mix of admiration and something darker. "But we cannot let him surpass us. He is our tool, not our equal." Damien's breath caught in his throat. He felt his heart rate increase, his skin prickling with unease. Was this the truth behind his transformation? Had he been merely a means to an end for the Arelin? He couldn't be sure, but a gnawing feeling of betrayal took root in his gut. The Arelin had shown him their advanced technology, had given him the means to create art beyond human capability. But had they done this out of kindness? Or had they seen something in him that made him a valuable tool in their grand design? Damien's mind raced. He had come here for a chance to elevate his art, to achieve something no human could ever dream of. But what if, all along, he had been part of a much larger, far more dangerous game? Despite his doubts, Damien couldn't turn away from the art. Every day, his creations grew more powerful. His paintings no longer just depicted scenes, they became portals, windows to other worlds, living entities that seemed to draw energy from the cosmos itself. His works transcended mere canvas and paint. They became instruments of creation and destruction. It wasn't long before the Aralen approached him with an offer. They wanted him to display his art to the universe, to showcase it at a grand exhibition that would involve multiple alien species, each one eager to witness the fusion of human and alien creativity. "This is your moment," Ziriel told him, his voice coldly convincing. "Your art will change the universe, Damien. You will be remembered for eternity." But as the day of the exhibition drew closer, Damien couldn't ignore the warning bells ringing in his mind. The Aralen had given him everything: knowledge, technology, power, but at what cost? What would they ask of him in return? And more importantly, what was he becoming? He had been abandoned by the art world, left to languish in obscurity. But now, with the help of the Aralen, his art had been rebuilt, transformed into something far greater than he had ever imagined. The irony was not lost on him. He had been abandoned by his own world, and now he was being rebuilt by these alien beings, only to find that they, too, had their own agenda. The exhibition would be his greatest triumph, his chance to showcase his work to a universe that had never seen anything like it. But it would also be the beginning of something far more dangerous. Damien didn't yet know it, but his art would soon attract the attention of forces far beyond his control. And the Aralen, once his mentors, would soon reveal their true intentions, leaving Damien to question whether he had become the architect of his own destiny or just another pawn in a much larger game. The days leading up to the exhibition were filled with a sense of mounting dread for Damien. Each passing hour saw his art becoming more and more otherworldly. His work, once grounded in the human experience, was now teetering on the edge of the unknown. He had embraced the Aralen technology, merging it with his creative instincts, and the result was astonishing. But the question that lingered in his mind, like a shadow, was whether he had become something more than an artist. Had he become a vessel for something far darker? Ziriel's words echoed in his mind, over and over. "You will change the universe, Damien. Your art will be remembered for eternity." But the warning in Ziriel's tone had not gone unnoticed. The Aralen were not simply creators of beauty and enlightenment, there was a cold, calculating side to them. They had given Damien power, but in return, they demanded something more. The art he had created was no longer just for human eyes. It had become something far beyond that, an artifact that could alter the course of history, or perhaps even reality itself. The night of the exhibition arrived, and Damien felt a gnawing sense of unease in the pit of his stomach. His work, displayed in a vast, holographic gallery on the alien station, was nothing short of breathtaking. Each piece shimmered with alien energy, the brushstrokes pulsing with life. The paintings seemed to have their own consciousness, reflecting the stars, the planets, and even the mysterious voids between them. It was as if his art had transcended time and space, pulling from the very essence of the universe. Damien stood at the center of the gallery, his heart racing as the alien visitors from countless star systems milled around him. There were beings from worlds he had never heard of, their forms as diverse as the galaxies themselves. Some had multiple limbs, others had translucent skin that revealed glowing veins. Yet, all of them stood in awe of his work, each drawn to the same mesmerizing pull that had captivated Damien from the beginning. But something felt wrong. As the Aralen guided the guests through the gallery, Damien noticed that the energy in the room seemed to shift. The paintings, once vibrant with hope and creativity, now felt ominous. There was an intensity to them, a hunger in their colors, that unsettled him. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew something had changed. It wasn't until Ziriel approached him, his presence cold and purposeful, that Damien's unease grew into outright fear. "Damien," Ziriel said, his voice carrying an air of finality. "Your work is more powerful than we anticipated. It is ready." "Ready for what?" Damien asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He had a sinking feeling that the answer was something he didn't want to hear. Ziriel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at one of Damien's most recent pieces, an abstract painting that seemed to swirl with cosmic energy, the colors twisting and morphing into shapes that defied logic. The painting was alive, in a way Damien could not explain. "The time has come," Zerial said, his voice quieter now. "What you've created, it is not merely art. It is a weapon." Damien's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, a weapon?" "This is art. It's a reflection of the universe, of life." Zerial smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was cold, calculating. "Art is a form of communication, Damien. A language that transcends boundaries. You've been using it to speak to the universe, but you've also been using it to manipulate the very fabric of reality. Your paintings are more than images, they are keys. And now, you have unlocked something far greater than art itself." Damien's mind raced. He had been so focused on the beauty of his work, so consumed by the power the Erlen had given him, that he hadn't realized the true consequences of his actions. He had been naive to think that art, human art, could exist in a vacuum, isolated from the forces that shaped the universe. But now, standing in front of Zerial, the truth became clear. The Erlen hadn't just chosen him to create art for art's sake. They had chosen him to create a weapon that could alter the balance of power across the galaxy. "You've given me this power," Damien said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But why? What do you want from me?" Zerial's eyes glowed with a cold, calculating light. "We've been building toward this moment for eons, Damien. The universe is in a delicate balance. The Erlen have waited for a species capable of wielding art as a tool of creation and destruction. Your human creativity is what we needed. You are the one who will lead us to the power we seek." Damien felt his chest tighten as the weight of Zerial's words sank in. He had been part of something far larger than he could have ever imagined. The Erlen had given him the power to create art beyond human comprehension, but that power came with a price. They had manipulated him, used his genius to fulfill their own agenda. Suddenly, the gallery around him seemed to close in, the paintings shifting as though they were alive. The energy in the room became palpable, charged with an intensity that made the air feel thick and suffocating. Damien realized that his creations were not just art, they were portals, channels through which the Erlen could control and manipulate the very fabric of space and time. As the Erlen began to gather around him, their forms shifting in and out of existence, Damien could feel the pull of his own creations. They called to him, urging him to release their power, to unlock the full potential of the paintings he had created. But something deep inside him resisted. "No," Damien whispered. "I won't do it." Zerial's eyes narrowed, his voice growing cold. "You have no choice, Damien. You have already unlocked the power. You are no longer just an artist. You are a creator of worlds. And we will use that power to reshape the universe." The room seemed to shimmer around him, the walls warping as though the very space itself was bending. Damien's heart raced, his mind spinning. He realized that his art, his creations, had become more than just expressions of creativity, they had become weapons of unimaginable power. The Erlen had been using him all along. They had given him the tools to create beauty, but that beauty was now being twisted into something far more dangerous. He had unwittingly built the very thing that could reshape the fate of galaxies. Damien's hands trembled as he reached for the nearest painting, his mind clouded with doubt. Could he still stop this? Could he undo what he had started, or was he too far gone? The gallery was silent, all eyes on him. And in that moment, Damien realized that the Erlen had never truly cared for his art, they had cared for the power it represented. The paintings had been a means to an end. And now, the time had come to take it back. Damien's hands shook as he stood in the center of the gallery, surrounded by his creations, his weapons. The room was charged with an eerie energy, and the Erlen watched him intently, their glowing eyes filled with anticipation. Zerial's cold voice echoed in his ears, each word slicing through his resolve like a blade. "You have no choice, Damien," Zerial repeated. "You've already unlocked the power. The universe will be reshaped, and you will lead us. Damien's chest tightened as the weight of his situation pressed down on him. He had created these pieces, poured his soul into them, but now they had become something he never intended, tools of control and destruction. His art was no longer just an expression of beauty, it was a force capable of bending reality itself. But Damien refused to give in. The Erlen may have shaped his path, but he was still human. His soul, his free will, was his own. He had to fight back, had to reclaim the agency that the Erlen had stripped from him. Taking a deep breath, Damien stepped away from the nearest painting, his mind racing. He had to find a way to reverse the damage, to sever the connection between his creations and the Erlen. But how? How could he fight something so vast, so ancient? As he looked around the gallery, Damien's gaze locked onto the shimmering canvas that had once been his masterpiece. It stood out from the others, not because of its visual impact, but because of the sensation it invoked. When Damien first laid eyes on it, it had felt like a living entity, a creation born from the stars themselves. Now, it felt like an anchor, a key that the Erlen had used to bind him to their will. The paintings were alive, he had known that from the beginning, but now, he realized something darker. They were linked to the Erlen through their advanced technology, feeding off his creative energy to sustain themselves. The Erlen were not just using his art to manipulate the universe, they were using it to draw power from him, feeding off his creativity to fuel their own schemes. His mind began to work faster, piecing together what he had learned over the past few weeks. The Erlen had shown him how to tap into the very energy of the cosmos through his art. They had encouraged him to push the boundaries of creativity, to use their technology to bring his work to life. But they had never told him the true cost, that his art was feeding their power, that his creations were merely vessels for their control. In that moment, Damien realized that he was no longer just a creator. He had become a conduit, a means by which the Erlen could manipulate the universe. His art was the vessel through which they would channel their will, reshaping reality to suit their needs. Damien's eyes narrowed as he stared at the canvas. He had to destroy it. He had to sever the connection between his art and the Erlen, or they would continue to control him, continue to bend the universe to their will. He stepped toward the painting, his heart pounding in his chest. As he approached, the energy in the room seemed to shift. The painting pulsed with a strange, hypnotic rhythm, as though it was alive, aware of his intentions. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. The air grew thick with tension, and Damien felt a presence behind him, a force that pressed down on him, as if the very fabric of reality was closing in. He turned to see Ziriel standing there, his expression unreadable. "You cannot stop this, Damien," Ziriel said, his voice calm but filled with an undeniable authority. "You've already crossed the threshold. There is no going back." Damien's mind raced. He couldn't let the Erlen win. He had to find a way to break free. His hands trembled, but he knew what he had to do. The paintings were a link to the Erlen, he had to sever that link, destroy the source of their power. With a final, determined breath, Damien reached out and touched the surface of the painting. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, as though the painting had come alive, responding to his touch. His body jerked, and for a brief moment, he saw flashes of alien landscapes, galaxies, stars, and strange, glowing beings. It was overwhelming, but he pushed through it, focusing on his intention, to sever the connection. He closed his eyes and let his mind drift, sinking into the painting. He could feel the energy pulsing beneath his skin, the power that the Erlen had infused into his creations. It was like a current, a thread that tied him to them. He could feel their presence, their cold, calculating minds, watching him, waiting for him to submit. But Damien didn't submit. He fought back. With every ounce of his willpower, he reached deeper into the painting, reaching for the thread that connected him to the Erlen. He grabbed it, pulling at it with all his strength, trying to sever it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden, violent force, the connection snapped. The world around him seemed to shatter. The gallery flickered, the walls bending and distorting as if reality itself was breaking apart. The paintings, once alive with energy, began to fade, their colors dulling and their forms collapsing in on themselves. Damien's heart raced as he stumbled back, watching in disbelief as the room began to disintegrate. The paintings, the Arelyn, the entire gallery, they were all crumbling, their power slipping away as the connection was severed. Ziriel's face twisted in anger as the energy around them began to destabilize. "You fool," he shouted, his voice filled with rage. "You don't understand the power you've unleashed." But it was too late. The damage was done. The Arelyn were no longer in control. Damien had broken their hold over him, severed the thread that had bound him to their will. The gallery was collapsing, and with it, the false reality that the Arelyn had built around him. He had freed himself from their manipulation, but now, he had to escape before the entire station fell apart. With a final glance at the fading paintings, Damien turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. The Arelyn had underestimated him. They had thought they could control him, use him as a pawn in their cosmic game. But Damien had found his own strength, and he had broken free. As the station began to collapse around him, Damien knew one thing for certain: he had not only freed himself, he had freed the universe from the Arelyn's grip. But at what cost? What had he unleashed by severing the connection? Only time would tell.